SOLA is a Washington state nonprofit organization, and we acknowledge we are on the unceded lands of the Sasquatch, Nisqually, and all Coast Salish peoples. Um, SOLA is based in Seattle on the traditional land of Duwamish people, whom I honor with deep gratitude for their stewardship of this land. And I invite you to take a moment to recognize the indigenous peoples of the land that you are inhabiting. Welcome, Lee. And yeah,
Thanks, Robin.
you're welcome.
Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have Gail and Jeanne here this evening to help us understand this crazy world of an art career, especially with their years of experience, decades of providing art and creativity to others and for others through their investment in the cultural landscape that is Washington State. So I'm Nicole Dement, the Executive Director of SOLA, and thanks, Robin, for being here, supporting us, getting us off the ground here. We would not be here without the co-founders, Jenny Ruffner and Marge Levy, founding this 10 years ago. In 2016, they looked around, Jenny specifically looked around and said, I see all of my beautiful peers and women artists in Washington State that I want to know more about. I want to understand who they are. I want to see them. I want them to be recognized. And as someone who spent her entire life in art and specifically working with people like Dale Chihuly early on at Pilchuck and teaching and investing so much in her career. And while having incredible response, she's an internationally known artist, but we're always sort of butting up against that ceiling. And so she looked around and said, I want to use my platform to elevate more women. So she founded SOLA, and Marge Levy was right there, one of her best friends, that said, we are a team, we are community. I have connections, and we know people together that we can support other women to do this. They looked around and said, I don't see this happening. So they made it happen. And here we are, still making it happen. We lost both Marge and Jenny last year, but we are continuing with SOLA to have these conversations. And so I'm telling you this long story because this is by women, for women, and about women. And the arts are hard. The arts for women are just a little bit harder. We see that in museums. We see the collection rate of women artists compared to men is so much lower. And we fortunately have seen progress in the last few years, but it's still not there. And so SOLA is here, and we are here today to know these women. And so with all of those challenges, this is where this conversation comes from. Why is it so hard for women to be recognized at the level that we should be? And so we have Gail and we have Jeanne to sort of help us to understand from their personal perspectives what has been the career, what has been the trajectory of your career so far. And maybe you can give us some insights. And let's start with one of you. Maybe just tell us, has it been linear or winding for you? Who would like to start?
I'd be happy to start. Yeah, my artistic trajectory has definitely been winding. I have always been a creative person. That has been a constant. But I guess my belief in myself as a fine artist has waned at different points in my life. And most specifically, I would say when I became a mom. Um, I was 33 years old. My son had a difficult beginning, and we spent his first 11 days at Swedish hospital. And when we got out of there, I like to say that he required from me extreme mothering, and I poured my heart and soul into sort of helping him be here. And I, I really enjoyed my life as his mom. And then um, together we discovered this love, shared love of reading, and I developed this passion for children's literature. And before long, I got interested in working as a children's librarian. And of course, he was young, and so I was around young children all the time. So I got kind of deeply involved with that, and then and worked in that capacity for about 10 years. And also, we raised our children very creatively, and they were both kind of natural artists themselves, and we really enjoyed being creative as a family. My husband is also an artist. But as I was doing that, I was very aware that I wasn't producing what I would call, I suppose, fine art. I wasn't making art. I was being creative. I was sort of draping my creativity over the library where I worked, which I loved, but I knew it wasn't my soul work. And the longer I was away from that, the more I feared I wouldn't get back to it. And it was kind of a heartbreaking time and a scary time. At a certain point, I consciously made the decision and kind of said I think it's not happening for me. I think I'm gonna pursue library science, get my master's, and have a career in library science. And enrolled in grad school, and kind of consciously gave up on being an artist. And oof, that hurt. And almost as soon as I made that decision, I had an idea descended upon me, and I did not understand this idea. I didn't have a context for it. It was unlike anything I'd seen anywhere, and it wouldn't go away. And finally, I just said, I'm going to do this thing. And I doubted this project. Even when I was driving out to the site where I made it, I still was doubting it. But I went through with it with a friend of mine, and I created what became called Grass Cocoon. And that project literally changed my life. And once I fulfilled that kind of calling and made that piece, I was just flooded with ideas. And I've been working in this way ever since, creating this body of work that I call Women in Nature. And it was a joyous reunion because, I thought that I'd lost that part of myself. And then suddenly it was back. And I have been loving and enjoying making this work ever since, and dropped out of grad school. And now I'm peddling my wares and trying to make it work as an artist. So that was a very definitive break for me that I thought might be permanent. And so yeah, so I guess
Mhm.
the lesson for me was um, if you're feeling that detachment from your creativity, um, hold on and keep trusting and put yourself in the way of inspiration. You know,
Mm,
the people that I like reading and listening to, like Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Big Magic, or Rick Rubin, who wrote The Creative Act, A Way of Being, or Anne Lamott, the writer who wrote Bird by Bird. They all tell us and believe that those ideas are there, they're swimming around, and we need to kind of make ourselves accessible to those ideas. And then when they come to you, take action, because if you don't, the theory is those ideas will land on somebody else. So I'm grateful that I took action and made that piece, because it transformed my life and set me on this new course. And, Picasso said, inspiration exists, but it needs to find us working. So
mm,
even if you don't know what you're doing, just
mhm,
I think it's important to keep those wheels turning. So
mm.
that's yes.
Thank you. Did you say you put yourself in the way of the muse? Did I just make that up, or you said
No,
that? That's
I did say that. Put yourself in the
beautiful.
way of the ideas and the
Of the
inspiration.
ideas.
Hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I think that just to clarify, you did go to art school,
I
and so
did.
before
Yes.
your kids, you were very
Yes.
invested in moving forward in your career, and so there was a definitive break with your
Yes.
son, and you
Mhm.
immersed yourself in caregiving, and you have two children, as far as I understand. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did do, art school and I loved it. It was life-changing. And I had some early successes that were very gratifying,
hmm
and yeah, it just
Yeah.
kind of my focus switched when I had kids
Yeah.
and
hmm
yeah.
I
So
think that's a pretty common story. We might have a few people on the call that recognize those moments too.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll come back to you, but Gail, can you please tell us a little bit about your linear and or winding experience so far?
Well, um, you know, when I'm listening here, I one thing that comes to mind is that, that it's it's always been a goal to not separate life and art for me forever. This just conceptually, I don't I just uh, don't do that. Um,
Great.
and that doesn't mean it's without lots of bumps and it's difficult. And um, you know, I had some I had two children early, and it's a pretty lonely time, um, hard time. And you know, I and then I had two children later, and we were all together as a family. Um, and uh, that's when I, went to art school, the university. I did go, I went to, I had all the credits I needed in every other way at the UW, from, a few years of going piecemeal there. But I was able to just enroll in art school there the second time around, nothing else. And that's where, but the my two younger children, that's when they were born too.
Wow.
Um, so uh, there's big spaces in age. It's not a mob, it's not like a, but it's uh, the love of my life, that family structure just um, has been a big source of information or of inspiration always. And I, work with one of my sons doing large installations. That's been just a treat, an incredible treat for me. And
Can
and
I ask?
as I got out of school, um, then I had all this exposure to other artists in that program because I did nothing else but that.
Mm.
And we were all, and I, we were I was one of the older ones there in my 30s, right? So, but it was still but it was a great mix, and those people are still really important to me that I went to school with, and to my family, and it's just been a nice meld. Um, oh, what else to say about that?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to clarify that I know that as a child, you were, drawing has been very important to you. It was sort of always the way to express in many
Hmm.
ways. And so in some ways it's been kind of linear in that you have always, as you said, incorporated art into your life. There was no separation. But I'm just gonna pause and I wanted so you had two children that you raised by yourself and you still created art and then you had another little distance of time between another two children and decided to go to grad school. So you now had four children going to grad school.
Well, it
And
wasn't grad school. It was
it was
undergrad
art
degree,
undergrad, but still art
but,
school
but art school, yes.
and significant. So, and you just kept going. You just kept persisting, and there was no breaks in there for you. I'm not
No,
challenging you as much, so I just want to
no. Thank you,
clarify
Nicole,
and
to help
honor
clarify it. Yeah.
honor you for all of that. I mean, just like starting with two and then going back to school and having two more. That says everything about your dedication to this. What can you
It,
tell us about?
it, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an open conversation. If you had a thought, please go ahead. Yeah.
Um, uh, well, I just wanted to say there wasn't a big separation in my mind that it was
Mm-hmm.
this or that.
Mm-hmm.
It was all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it didn't work very well. And people suffered from it not working very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a back and forth kind of journey.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and I feel like I'm near the end of that journey. And um, I, I'm looking now at thinking about making some careful models of the some of the large scale installations that I did with Sam and by myself as well, um and just sort of putting things in order that way, like having those, because those large scale installations don't exist. They were there for 6 months or a month or 2 months, and then they're not there anymore. They only exist because of the photographs that I've taken and that sort of thing. So I'd like to put that together and um, be able to look at it going forward. I think that would be interesting for me and for anybody who's interested in that work, just in general. But anyway.
Well, I love the sound of that. We know that archiving is something that I keep pushing for all artists and especially women artists because this in some respects, these stories that we're telling, these lived experiences, are the archive of that other people can look to and can understand. Yeah, I've got two kids, and I really am an artist, and I am going to dedicate. I am just dedicated. There's not a going to. It just is. And so helping others, to other women at whatever stage they're at, to understand that you can do this.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting to have those. I'd like to make like a visual archive that somebody could um, recreate things in their own way with the materials that I have. And that brings me to the materials that I have are very based in the oh, after the 1950s when plastics really happened, So I have both it's interfacing from my mother's work, which was sewing and creating things out of cloth. And this was interfacing that was developed in the 60s, the 1960s. And I, it's a non-woven archival fabric that's not going to go away. So I feel a responsibility to deal with it. So, and to do something with it. And that's also part of this interest in um, making this archive too.
Yeah.
Because you can't take it to the dump, you can't throw it away because it's not good stuff,
It's art. You can't take it to the dump. I'm not letting you.
It's quite beautiful. The treatment of it and whatnot,
It is.
yeah,
I've
it's
seen your
very
work.
lacy and light and stuff. So, and very strong. So
Thank
anyway,
you.
Sure.
So do you feel like, and I'm going to open this up to both of you, Jeanne and Gail, whoever's most, maybe Jeanne, because caregiving and your children were so important.
Mhm.
Now, can you give us some idea? Did that caregiving, do you feel like it influenced your artistic practice? Because I know that you've shared about the library, and I'd love to,
Yeah.
I mean that, but that was sort of a creativity in a maybe another field,
Mhm.
more theatrical, possibly.
Mhm.
And but do you think it's influenced your artistic practice in any ways, or how has your caregiving done that? Or
Mm.
has it?
Yeah, I do think it has. We as a family have beautiful holiday traditions. For example, we make at Christmas time, we make these hand-drawn and hand-decorated cookies for our tree, which was a tradition that my husband that came from my husband's family. He's German, and it was something that we all did together. And um, had to learn how. My husband was always the expert, but the rest of us had to sort of learn how to do that. And um, I feel like, and Easter, we had elaborate ceremonies and rituals and creative things that we do. And so I think it was about art in everyday life for me, and making things beautiful and working every day. The kids drew every day, that was a huge part of their lives. I was mentioning earlier to you three that my son interpreted everything that he learned into a drawing, and so that really impacted me just about making my life the work of art and making our family the work of art. Um, Also, my passion for children's literature that sprung up after becoming a mom. It wasn't much a part of my life when I was a kid. There were five kids in my family. No one really read to me, but my son and I were voracious readers, and fairy tales are still a huge part of my life today. I sometimes I
Mm.
think I think in fairy tale form.
Hmm.
know? And sometimes when I set about a project that requires a lot of repetitive um, movement and a repetitive facet to the making of the thing, I often reflect on some of those fairy tales where the protagonist had to sort the seeds, this endless task of like having to do this repetitive. And I think there's something to that kind of work. For me, I love, for example, to hand stitch teeny tiny tiny stitches. There's something very meditative for me about that. I grew up sewing. My mom was an amazing sewer. I mean, she'd sew outfits for the whole family, if we had an event to go to. And um, she taught me how to hand stitch and machine stitch, and it's still something that I bring to my work often. And we know that handwork um, helps stimulate, calming hormones in our bodies, and it's a very peaceful thing to do, whether it's knitting or crocheting, or for me, in my case, hand stitching, and building objects with fabric. I think is just it's a beautiful thing for me to do. And so, a lot of those activities are rooted in my own childhood and then in the way that I raised my kids. It was just very hands-on. My kids, both went to Waldorf school. And when you go to Waldorf school, you learn how to knit when you're 4. And not only that, they made their own knitting needles you know, with a dowel that they put in a pencil sharpener and then they sanded the tip. So that was our
Mm.
life. We were very hands-on makers, and
Mm.
that is still how I choose to live today. I try to
Mm.
make everyday life is an art form, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Your grass cocoon. I mean, that initial is very much you literally braided nature into the woman's hair, or the
Yeah.
hair into the nature. I'm not sure which one came first, the hair or the nature, chicken or egg hair. Thank you for sharing that. Gail, I'm seeing a lot of synchronicities between the sewing and the
Yeah,
materials and the
right.
handwork and the building.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts here?
Well, you're right. There is a lot of synchronicity between those ways of making. You know, there's especially someone my age, the lone male artist thing that you can't possibly compete with. Just if you're in that milieu, then uh, there's no reason I found to not be very straightforward about incorporating what was happening to me, and with my family, and conflating it all with the art. And so I've
Mm,
just worked, and I'm sure that's uh, true of both of us. And I worked really hard at incorporating um, the actions, instead of doing oil painting, I used the spilled cereal on the floor and made a collage, that kind of stuff. So, I totally believe in that, in bringing your own uh, life demands into your studio or your living room as a studio, or
mhm,
whatever it is that you're using, and take it seriously, like
mhm,
hardcore seriously. That's a way to get somewhere with the artistic process.
mhm. Did you have any strategies, or how did you stay focused? I mean, there was so much going on between school and four kids, two little ones.
I just took it at that there was a level of importance to all of it.
Mhm.
And so then when that kind of melding started happening, I had some great teachers at the UW and other students too. They were,
Yeah,
we had a nice group.
yeah.
That was the course that I decided to take, was to integrate those things. Um, and I studied with some really formalist kinds of, like Jacob Lawrence was there when I was there, like uh, uh, there were no women. Michael Spafford, um, uh, Bob Jones, all these incredible
Great
artists.
names.
They
Incredible.
they really, and they were on their way out. They were aging out. So
Mm-hmm.
they were open, to their credit, to thinking
Mm-hmm.
about different concepts, of what what was um, a worthy pursuit. So
Sure.
I will
Yeah.
appreciate that through all of my life. That
Yeah.
was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Feel very lucky.
Those it would be incredible to study with those individuals for sure. So
Yeah.
we're lucky to study with you now. Jeanne, when you were in that moment and experiencing that sadness, the grief of maybe realizing, this might not be for me, was there a strategies? Was there something that kept you going? Before you knew you could have some momentum, or what was that shift like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was heartbroken, and it was kind of doubly heartbreaking for me in a way because my husband was an artist, and when we moved to Port Townsend, we had Corbin, my son, and I was a full-time mom, and Gunter was working as an artist. So everybody got to know us as a couple, and Gunter was the artist, and I was Corbin's mom, and oof, that hurt, you know. I was like, but I'm an artist, but I wasn't working as an artist at that time. So I think when I started working at the library, it was such a creative time for me, and I was working as a children's librarian, and I was creating programming not just for kids, but for teens and also for adults. And so there was a lot of invention and a lot of creativity. For example, started a Day of the Dead event, and I invited people from the community to come in with photographs of their deceased loved ones to make little ofrendas out of toddler shoe boxes that I'd purchased, and I put out a ton of materials, and that was extremely gratifying to me. And the community made, I didn't know if they'd show up, but they did in droves, and they made beautiful things. And so I was, I was always engaged in this practice of making things and sharing that process with a bigger community. So that was special. And I did feel that I had a role in the community, in this little community that felt important to me. And so in some ways, it's been a bit of a trade-off because now that I'm sort of working alone in my studio, I've got my identity as a fine artist back, but I did lose that role of feeling really useful in my local community. And my artwork has brought me to a bigger community, a far-flung community. And I think I was describing it the other day, like the mycelium that grows underground. Sometimes I feel like I have this sort of mycelium-like connection with people around the world because of this art thing, which was unexpected and such a delight, so beautiful. Um, so back to your question, though, I think that I was supplementing.
Mm,
I was trying to get what I needed out of being an artist in the community working with people. But that's not quite the same of doing the deep soul work of your own work. And so to have come back to that was such a joyous reunion. I remember when I made Grass Cocoon, um, and really all of those early pieces, the sensation that I experienced afterward was just profound gratitude. And because I have this belief that probably if I hadn't made these things, someone else may have. And so I always feel so grateful that I got to make Grass Cocoon and I got to make extensions and that I was the one that got to make this work. And so it is, well, and also because I am better able to serve my mission now. And I think that's a big part of it for me now is that I've identified my mission as an artist. And when I have sort of slow periods like I'm having now, I just hold on to my mission. And,
mm.
you know, um, and because I really believe in it. And in case anyone's wondering, I'll share what my mission is.
Please, yes.
My mission is to continue to express my reverence for the natural world and my deeply held belief that we humans are part of its fabric. And so when I spend a lot of time outside and that's my daily practice with my dogs, and that's where I find the sites where I create my photographic projects and also where I bump into the materials that I use in those projects. And so there's for me, a beautiful merging for me of what I love to do, which is make things and to be out in the natural world doing it in service of my mission. So I'm just holding on to that fervently.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Gail, did you come up with a mission during all this time, or has it always been that very focused, just dedicating yourself to your art? Have things changed over time?
I think I'm a little more conscious of where things are going, how that and a little less reactive to the materials, and uh, my mission over time, that's what you're asking.
I'm just I'm just being a bad moderator. I'm making it easy
No,
on
you're
myself. I'm totally open
let me turn up my hearing aid. No, you're not.
I'm just trying to include you in the conversation, but whatever, if there's anything that Jeanne said that you're inspired to share about, I mean, the question was, I don't know if it applies to you, so I'm trying to
Okay.
adapt. But through time, was there something that kept you going? If there was a shift, was there a momentum all of a sudden that sort of supported you? I guess I'm thinking about, anybody out there that's having a down moment, and from your two perspectives, or a slow moment, or maybe not able to create right now, is there a strategy or something that you could recommend for someone? Or if you had a moment where things did shift, you all of a sudden did get that momentum that you've been waiting for, what was that like?
Well, I think of uh, leaving art school and having uh, working with a group of artists that I'd been working with the whole time, and having a show at a place called the Potato Head Gallery that was down in that no longer exists, but it's a pretty great place. And um, and we did a group show together. And my oldest son came, and he was he was at the University of Washington too, and he was in the marching band. So he brought his the marching band with him.
The whole band.
The whole band, and no, I'm sorry, not the whole band, the
Okay.
whole saxophone section.
Section. Oh my.
So they did all these renditions of all these songs with saxophones, and it was on Second Avenue in Belltown. It was just a great time, and um, uh, it just made me feel good about life. It was pretty wonderful.
That sounds
And Jeanne,
great.
I totally share the reverence for the natural world, big time. From my family of origin, who were Depression era people who did a lot of camping, during the 1930s. And by the time I came around, they had a stable place. But we always traveled back to see the family that they had to leave, during that time. So I've seen the Western states big time, traveling back and forth. We didn't stay in hotels. We camped. And
Mhm.
for myself and my siblings, that's just never gone away, that
Mhm.
knowledge of the land and where we are. And a lot of the work that I do now has that element to it. Even uh, the last thing I did it was in Utah in 2024. We used some blue, you know, horrible blue tarps that I had carefully cleaned, and that had decayed badly. Bad actors. Uh, but they were also from the desert surround. This is where near Salt Lake City. And so I built out a large installation that had used some of that, and then some more delicate materials. And that was a space that people could, they really used it. They had it up for, it was a college there. But they used this rather large space. They had good facilities, very tall ceilings. And I guess that's just an example of, it made me go back in time and think about crossing those deserts and seeing the little road that goes off to the side, and seeing those kinds of living situations. And, it gave me, so pursuing those sorts of places to show the work makes me develop the idea more strongly. Um, and I don't always know what's going to happen, but it is a pattern for me to kind of work that way.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to have had some opportunities to do that. And they're always temporary. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Your installations.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hence all the photos. so I can remember what happened. So
I think I mean, there's so many synchronicities between the two of you. So,
I think so. Yeah,
you
I think
know,
there is.
the themes that you're working around, obviously, you know, the breaks that you had, Jeanne, are not the same as, you know, the constant forced art creation that you did, Gail. But obviously, your friend is not still wrapped in nature by her hair. So,
Nope.
grass cocoon is a temporary piece in the photos. So I just love
Right,
this.
right. It's important to
Uh,
have that documentation for sure.
Yeah.
mhm. I just want to invite the audience to put in the chat any questions that you have. We want this to be as relevant to you as possible. So please add any questions to the chat. And while you guys are thinking about that and adding that, I wonder if these challenges and the dedication that's necessary, no matter if it's winding or if it's linear, have they helped you to, well, I'm sure everyone has their vision of success, and what that success might have been at 28 or even 48 might not be the same as it is today. And I'm wondering if you can share with us through your specific winding and or linear careers,
Mm,
how has your definition of success changed, or has it?
mm. Yeah. Well, when I first got started on this journey, I went to art school in the late 80s, graduated in 91. Um, Back in that day, there obviously was no social media, and so the process was you went to art school, maybe you went to grad school, you had to find a gallery to represent you, and then maybe you'd get some good press, and then maybe another gallery, and it was it was a pretty arduous path, really. Um, and now we have this social media thing that can really speed things up and change things. And one of the delightful byproducts of that for me has been that my art hasn't been limited to the world of galleries and museums. It's been out there in the world where just regular people can see it and react to it. And I've made connections with, what I call kindred spirits, with people around the world. And that was a surprise and something that is very gratifying for me. I much prefer, well, I mean, I've had some of those things like shows in museums and galleries and whatever included in books and some magazines and things like that. So of course that's lovely. But
Mhm.
but I so value these relationships and the exposure that I've experienced to just regular people, not people with an art degree, not people who frequent galleries, just people. And
Mhm.
that's been very meaningful to me. And I think that was a piece of feeling. I don't know how successful I feel in traditional ways. I've never made a lot of money doing this. I make a little bit
Mhm.
of money doing this. I have a desk job, to help fill in. I think as artists, often we have to have multiple income streams, especially since my husband is also an artist. It would have been good if one of us had had some other skill set, but God help us, this is it. Um, so, I certainly value being invited to share my work in galleries and museums, but I really, really value the just grassroots connections that I have with like-minded people who care about the natural world and who care about art and making things. So that's been very, very significant to me.
Thank you. I think that is a beautiful version of success, is to be connected in that way. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Gail, do you have an idea of what success is at this stage, or? Anything else you'd like to share? We do have some questions that Robin, I think, is populating the chat, but I'd love to hear your answer to this one.
Um, hmm. Well, I think the idea of success and the ambition behind that has changed over time. Um,
Mhm.
uh, that's not the big driver right now. Um, the traveling and doing those installations was life changing for so many reasons. The communities I'd be embedded in, and working with my son in those communities sometimes um, was uh, really life affirming and good. And so I'm less interested in uh, galleries and um, the economic situation. There has never been one that worked for me anyway. That
Mhm.
it was always just a stressor and not um, something that provided sustenance in any way, really. I mean, I had a great gallerist, Francine Setters, was for until she retired, but it was, it was she was a delight to work with, completely and completely non-focused on money. You
Mm.
like, uh, and it was not a bad experience at all. It was nice. But that's been, it's been a few decades since she stopped her gallery. Um, anyway, I'm not sure what else to say about that.
I think that's perfect. Success changes over time, and that is
Yeah,
completely
that's success.
relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Galleries, I think both of you shared the traditional version of what success means is not what has worked for you in some ways, if
Mm.
that feels accurate.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I worked at that, and I
Mhm.
certainly worked with Francine, and uh, but it was more about the connection with the artists there who really uh, helped me grow. Um,
Mhm.
but I also appreciated her offbeat kind of way of um, conducting business too. That was interesting. So, um,
Mhm. Thank you, Lee, for your comment here in the chat. I'll just read it out loud. Thank you for the comments about how the natural world is part of your work. I started drawing and then painting landscapes over 50 years ago, and landscapes, real and surreal, continue to creep into my paintings. I just wonder if we as women possibly a bit more connected to the natural world.
Mm. I would love to chat about that. I I don't know if we as women are more connected to the natural world. I think in general, um, the human relationship with the natural world is waning. And
Mm,
the reason I think that is in part due to the time that I spent reading children's literature when my kids were little, for example, Little House on the Prairie or The Yearling. And if you spend any time in those kinds of books from that era, I mean, it's profound. It's like reading an anthropological text from a long gone time, even though it was only it was 150 years ago. That's not that long ago in the scope of things. But in those books, the characters in those books had such a close rapport with the natural world because if you didn't, you would perish. So Ma Ingalls, she knew how to render fat. She knew how to butcher a cow. If she and her husband could butcher animals, they made candles. They, spun flax. They wove linen. They did it all, except maybe I think they used to bring in a cobbler to make their shoes. The yearling too. I mean, you had to be able to read the clouds. You had to understand the weather. You couldn't travel if there was perhaps a storm coming. So that was part of the education.
mm,
And it was twofold for me. It was doing things with your hands and it was understanding the natural world. And those are the things that I'm seeing that have really fallen away. Um, people aren't working
Mm,
with children in the library, some of those kids who were maybe 5, 6 couldn't tie a knot, a simple knot yet. And they all had Velcro shoes on, and so
mm,
some of these things I feel we're just losing them. Um, my
mm,
daughter, too, who did a program in college this year because she was an RA, she had a little crochet project. And you had to, crochet a chain, just a chain of stitches. And a lot of the kids who were 18, 19 really couldn't make it happen. And so
mm,
I think there's this simultaneous deterioration of our relationship with the natural world and also our abilities to create and make things with our hands.
mm,
Most of our hands are doing this now. My hands
mhm.
don't want to do this. My hands want to make things. That's what these tools were designed to do. And
Mm,
when I'm forced to do a lot of this, I'm
mhm.
very happy, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my take on that. And so I
Mhm,
don't know if it's just women. I
mm,
don't know if we're carrying that thread or not. I know a lot of men and a lot of farmers who are very
mm,
close to the natural world and
mm.
would probably fare better in it than I would if push came to shove. But it's an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your dedication as well, Lee. So
Ethan
we
has a
have about,
question in here, by the way.
oh, okay. Mhm.
Yes, she was wondering if you could say a little more about how you sustained your lives financially as women artists and continue to find time to practice.
Gail, will you start with this one?
Sure. I've never sustained any um, meaningful contribution to my financially to my whole situation. So, I mean, I've made money over time and doing the installations, I make money with that, um, but I've just pieced things together as I've gone along and had a big desire to do something. I've tried to find ways to do it. Um,
Hmm.
so they were uh, so I can't say that I had financial security other than through, my family. But um, yeah, and that's just a a fact of life. It's not, and I don't regret my course of action and stuff, but that's just how it went for me. So um, and sell a painting, one painting in a show. That's not unusual, and
Yeah.
then you're still out a huge amount of money from what you've produced. So I kind
Mhm,
of went away from that, and that really started those making work that I could repurpose and reuse and do it again, but in a different form, in a different place, and for different reasons.
Mhm.
So uh, yeah, that's what I know about that.
So Jean, I know you said you have a desk job, I think is how you phrased it.
Yeah, I do. I have a part-time desk job. I work in a
Yeah.
chiropractic office. I run
Mhm,
the office 2 days a week, and I get free chiropractic care, and so does my family, which is great because we're all very physical people. So that's one income thread. My daughter is a dance major at Skidmore College, and when she had her group visit with all of her professors, they said as a dancer, you have to have multiple income streams. And that's what she's exploring this summer. And that is what has worked for me and my husband. My husband was the primary breadwinner when our kids were little. He still technically is. I make more money now that I'm not raising kids full time. But he's preparing for a show right now. So right now I'm working for him. I have a role in his work, and then when I'm on the hot seat or getting ready for a show, he helps me. We have a beautiful collaborative rapport in the studio. We share a studio, and I'm very lucky. So I couldn't have done it on my own. Yeah. Um, so that's what works for me, to work part-time. Um, away from the studio and then the rest of the time in the studio. And sometimes I have to put my work on hold to help my husband. And I feel I enjoy doing that work too, though. So sometimes it's
Mm.
nice to just do someone else's work, some grunt work that isn't that meaningful or that taxing, or there's nothing. It's for me, it's low stakes, right? If I'm
Mhm.
helping him, it's low stakes. And sometimes that's kind of nice to step away from my own thing and help him.
Mm. Thank you. So we're just a couple minutes, we're 1 minute left, but I am dying to have you share, both of you share just a little bit of advice for someone who is dealing with some caretaking or, trying to manage having an art career as a woman. What would your bit of advice be?
Yeah. Uh, I would say, you know, conceptually, don't separate life from art. Just don't separate it. Just, and start there and then see what kind of things come into being from that mindset is what that's my advice.
Mm. And I would say keep keep the wheels moving. Don't judge your ideas. If you have ever read the book Bird by Bird by the writer Anne Lamott, she talks about the shitty first draft, that every writer starts with a shitty first draft. And, you have to sort of get something out. And if you can withhold judgment and just make observations, and then for me, it's sort of like this trail of breadcrumbs, and one project leads to the next project. And so you have to start somewhere. So start with, if you're stuck, start with that shitty first draft, and then just keep going. And if you're at a loss, um, I would say just keep your hands moving. Keep if you're a painter, just keep that a practice of daily a little sketch every day. If you're a writer, write in your journal every day. For me, because I work outside, I walk outside every day. That is my practice. I put myself in the way of inspiration by going out into the natural world. And that's where I encounter materials and interesting places. So I would say have a passion, hold on to your mission if you have identified one, and just put one foot in front of the other. Also, there are some very inspiring and beautiful books out there about the creative process. And a few of them that I love, I'm going to tell you about. Just tell you the author and title: Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. And those are, so we've got well, actually, there isn't a visual artist in there. There's a music producer and two writers, but it's all the same.
Mhm. Sounds like there's an opening for an author,
Maybe so.
visual artist author to write that book.
Yeah.
I thank you all so much for this conversation. We sincerely appreciate all of you attending and sincerely hope that you continue to dedicate and find that mission. And thank you, Gail. Thank you, Jeanne, for inspiring us to continue forward.
Hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
inviting us. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Every time I decided I was going to, as a creative consultant, years ago, I knew I had to find the linchpin that would, for me to make money and for me to still be an artist. And I happened on, again, these quips, my clever little mind. I decided to call myself, instead of an artist, I call myself a creative consultant, which meant I could walk into almost any environment and show them the creative aspect of that and have them hire me.
Hmm.
And then, so that there was a mental shift. Not from the creative part of me, but how do I dovetail the financial world that was not open to art, so to speak. I had to help them redefine what they thought of art as a creative endeavor. And once I was able to do that, I could own whatever job that I walked into, and always told them I would leave it better than I found it, because I could infuse it with the creative aspect, which gave me enormous power of the creative process to invent and reinvent all the time what I was doing. So I built a lot of confidence over the years, bolstering this notion that creative thought and its development was a natural phenomenon that I could help teachers and students and workers and whomever, the environment that I was walking into, I could empower that with my creative energy. So that's on one side. The other side is when I was in Boston and when, getting all these kudos and everything, my work was very, very large and very potent and powerful, but it wasn't bringing in any money. I had a lot of, kudos and awards and, that sort of thing, but it wasn't money generating. So I had to come up with this idea of the creative thought in its development. But by the time I got to California, I met a lot of artists who were in these fairs and whatever, and they told me about the power of commercializing your artwork. That's when I started making money. I was selected to be in what they call the stable of art consultants who sold to businesses and whatever. So I had to look, they looked at my portfolio and said, "Oh, girl, you're really talented, but we can't sell this. This is too big, too dark, too whatever. How do you feel about pinks and greens?" And I thought, what do you mean? And so I just threw some stuff on some large paper and handed them 20 by 30 acrylic, which I used to work in oil, acrylic on paper. And they loved it. They sold it. I mean, I made $3,000 in a weekend. And from that point on, I knew that I had both the professional side of my artwork and the commercial side of my artwork. So, I mean, the other day, I had a workshop making the large crepe paper flowers with 10 women in it, chomping at the bit to do that. I get paid for workshops like this. I get paid for, jelly plating workshops. I get paid to show people how to make, I made puppets. I made life-size puppets. And to me, because I'm not doing painting and I'm not doing classical sculpture, and I'm not doing, I've won 3 grants for the Polaroid. I'm in the Polaroid collection in Germany of the large photographs. Just because I'm making butterflies and flowers doesn't mean that I'm still not doing the creative work. And I'm instilling all the time with everyone that I work with who shares my need to create, is that we're creative people. You don't have to do the plastic arts. When I went to art school, boy, let me tell you, it was very intense. It was very, very intense because I was studying classical sculpture. And if it wasn't perfection, it didn't count. And I had to grow out of that. And I'm so happy I did. So if there is a kink or a switch, that's it. Where I was trained in the classical art form, 5 grueling years. And perfection was what I was after, the verisimilitude. When I let that go and declared myself to be a creative consultant, that I could help other people find their creative power, as I was doing it myself as well. I never have stopped creating work. I work every single day, except for this move. I make something every single day. That's my construct. I have to make something every single day. And I make something every day. I like to make something every day. And believe you me, that's part of the process for me, that you know, the kinks and the pits and the falls is you always get back up onto that horse of creation and you ride it until you get to the next bar that you have to jump over.